Hi, my name's Paul Cresswell. Welcome to Paul's Tackle Reviews. The purpose of this YouTube channel is to give you some reviews of tackle that's been out on the bank, tried and tested by an unbiased, unsponsored angler, and that's me. Today is a little bit different, and I'm not taking you through some tackle, although I'm going to look at something that I've covered on a previous video, which is the Preston ICS and the ICM method feeders and pellet feeders. What I'm going to look at today is the loading that they take in terms of how many micros you get on them when you're using them. And this came from Gareth Evans, who watches my videos, and he watched my last video where I got my scales out and I've weighed stots, I've weighed hooks, and I've weighed pellets, and he suggested that this would be an interesting video. Might seem a little bit sad to some people, but I think what I'm going to show you is interesting and might get you thinking about things. So I use the Preston ICS and ICM feeder system. I rarely fish beyond 40 meters, so most of them are fairly small and fairly lightweight. Like I say, I've done a separate video on them if you want to look into that. What I did was I took each of the different method and pellet feeders and I weighed them empty with a stem and a tail rubber on. And then I loaded them with micros that I prepared as if I was on the bank, and I weighed them again, and then that's enabled me to work out how many micros are on there in terms of weight and in terms of numbers for each of the different sizes of feeder. So one or two things to say here is the amount you put on a feeder isn't exactly the same every time. Sometimes I'll even double skin where I'll put two lots in the mold to create a big amount, but I've tried to do what I would regard as a normal loading for me. I always use the molds for method feeders, even the hybrid feeders. Some people don't. I like the consistency. Lee Kerry, far better angler than I'll ever dream to be, he uses them, and he uses them because it gives a good consistency to the amount that you're feeding, also the shape of the feeder when it comes out of the mold. The pellets I use are Ringer's R2 pellets. As usual, I'm stood slightly to this side because I'm going to put a load of information there. I use the R2 Ringer's pellets. I think these are excellent pellets. If I'm using them on the pole, maybe for F1s, then I'll put some in a tub and put some water, put it in the fridge overnight. They've blown up to a really big size. But if I'm using it for the method feeder, I will soak them in water, and I'm quite happy to use tap water. I will do that for around 1.5 to 2 minutes. So put some photos. I've got the Guru pellet strainer. It fits into my Drennan bait tub. So take the pellets, put them in, give them 1.5 to 2 minutes, take it out, and then hold it at an angle to let a lot of water run off, and then just leave the pellet strainer, leave them in. And I think if you leave them for kind of 20 to 30 minutes, then they just start to absorb a little bit more water. They're not fully blown up in size, a bit of sponginess, and I also found with these pellets there's a little bit of tackiness there, which helps as well. So what I'm going to do is go through each of the feeders from the one that took the smallest amount of micros up to the one that took the biggest. I'll put a photo here so you can see how I've loaded it. You can also see the weight, but at the end of this I've got a table, full screen table, where it will show you which feeder, the weight before, the weight after, and the number of micros that equated to. So the first one is the 15 gram ICM feeder, and just for those that don't know, there's the ICM, which I always say the M is for mini. These are very small little feeders used in winter, or where you're just trying to create a small target bait, and they have a small stem that goes in them. And then the ICS one is probably the one that more people use. They have a different size stem, a bigger, wider stem, and they cover anything right up to, you can do 60 gram feeders on the same stem. So the 15 gram ICM method feeder is the smallest that I use. It's very good in winter. I also use it in summer on snake lakes, where you maybe just cast into the far side. Creates a great little target bait, but as you can see, it doesn't take a lot of bait, and there's only around 141 micros on that. The next one is the ICM, and I've got a 25 gram one here. I couldn't find me lighter one, but it doesn't really matter, they're both the same size. It's the small pellet feeder. So with a pellet feeder, you don't need a mold, but you try and ram them in and keep them nice and tight in there, and then when they go in the water, they come out with your hook bait in. And I always, whenever I'm fishing the method, always have a pellet feeder on my tray, and at some point in the first half an hour I'll have a cast with it, because some days the pellet feeder outscores the method feeder. Don't know why, different kind of presentation, always worth just having a couple of casts with it and seeing if it's going to be one of those days. The small pellet on the ICM takes 187 micros. Next we're on to the ICS, the new hybrid XR feeders. These are fantastic. They only came out last year. Bottom weighted, fly brilliantly, and I've caught an awful lot on this smaller one in the summer, and I've been using it in the winter as well. It's been brilliant. It's my new favorite, and that's got around 233 micros on it. I've then got the ICS pellet feeder. This is bigger than the ICM one and takes around 237 micros. Next up, we've got the ICS method, and this is their standard small method feeder. They'll sell thousands of these. Des Shape, if you watch his videos, he uses this one all the time. Great opening feeder to use, especially in the summer. Very popular. It's quite a step up. We're up to 422 on that, and part of the reason is on the hybrid the walls kind of enclose it, whereas on the ICS, on the standard method, you're making a pellet mound over the whole width of it, so it is a step up in the amount you feed. I've then got the ICS hybrid in their medium size, so I'm back on a hybrid again. This is quite a bit bigger, and this has around 461 pellets in each one. And then finally we're on to the, I think they call it a large, but I would describe it as a medium, the large method, and this takes 680 pellets, and that's a big step up in terms of the amount of bait that you're feeding as well. So it's not an exact science. Different pellets weigh different amounts, will be different sizes, but what you can take away from this is the proportion between each one, so you've got an idea about how much each one is adding in terms of bait when you're fishing. I've also on the table included the weights when they're loaded, and you can see that there's quite a bit of difference between the loaded weights and the unloaded weights as well. So my observations on the table. I think the ICM I always expected to be the smallest, but the new hybrids aren't actually that much more than the ICM. So I'm kind of questioning, do I need the ICM now? And I do use it occasionally. I do probably prefer the protection of the hybrid. So there's a question for me about whether I'll still use the ICM now the new hybrids are out. The methods carry a lot more bait than the hybrids. We probably knew that, but it really is quite a step up. So the small hybrid 233 micros, the small method 422, and that's because of how they're loaded and how you use them. I think what you will see from the table is the unloaded weights are close to what the manufacturers said they were going to be. So that's nice to know that we are buying stuff that's made to a good quality. And the small hybrid is 20 grams unloaded, but 24 loaded. But if you take the larger method one that I've got, you're going from 22 grams unloaded, you're right up to 34 grams. So that's half as much again in weight through the weight of pellets. And you need to think about that, because when you're casting, that is going to go further. And if you're tied to an island and you put a big one on, you are going to risk catching that island. So you need to be aware that different loadings obviously increases the weight quite a bit as well. Final point, and I made this on my last video when I'd done lots of weighing pellets, is the fish are getting a good deal here, because even on the smallest one we've got 140 micros going in each time. Obviously there was no bait here, so if you're putting a big wafter in, that's going to take up some of the space that a micro the micros would have taken. If you put in double dead maggot, that's going to take up less space. So, but I've tried to do it in a consistent way. I hope that's been of interest, and I hope it's been of interest to more than Gareth, but it's given me some ideas, it's given me some thoughts about how much we are feeding, how much relative some of these are feeding, and I think it's been quite useful. If you've got any comments or any questions, please put them below. That would be great. If you want to give me a thumbs up to spur me on to do more videos, that's always appreciated. If you want to join the subscribers, you'll automatically get notified of future videos as they come along. Like I say, there's over 30 videos now of tackle that I've reviewed on my channel if you want to check those out. Until next time, tight lines.